One good place to start talking about theory is by exploring modes. So some of the things we're going to cover is what is a mode, why they're important, a really easy way to remember them in order, and some interesting ways to apply them, and then how we're going to begin practicing them. So what is a mode? The simplest way I can put it is a mode is a scale that is derived from another scale. So it's probably better if I just show you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a C major scale, and if I start that C major scale on the second note of the scale and I play it up to the octave, what I've done is I've created a mode. Right? We have another starting point, a new starting point, and the intervals on my way from this note to its octave are different than the parent that it belongs to. So we have different names for these modes. We'll go over that in a bit, but that's pretty much what a mode is. Modes are important because they're the improviser's toolbox. This is how we create different tonalities while we're soloing over the chord changes in a tune. So some other reasons why modes are important are it gives you different tonalities to explore, which can open up new ideas. Right? Maybe it's something you haven't thought about or heard yet in your head, but now because you're playing this mode, you can generate some inspiration. Which pushes us to another reason is it gets us further in expressing ourselves as musicians. And another good reason why they're important is that it's a form of ear training. And what we're going to find, the way that I suggest practicing these modes is we'll have a comparative study, what I call a comparative study. And what that means to me is you have two modes and you're playing one and then you're playing the other and you're hearing how the intervals change between the two, and what that starts to do is it starts to associate some of the intervals like a major third, a flat 7, a flat 9. It really starts to put them in your ears so that when you hear it in your head you can identify what it is in English and then whip it out on your instrument. An easy way to remember the order of the modes is with an acronym that I made up. I'm sure there's others. The one that I made up is I diligently practice Lydian modes after lunch. And the order is Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian with the P, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and Locrian. So one more time. I diligently practice Lydian modes after lunch. So I'm going to take a second and talk about the intervals that I'm going to be mentioning in this next section. You'll hear me say things like flat third, flat seventh, flat fifth, and really where I'm getting that information from is in reference to your scale in general. So I'm going to stick with C. That's what we've been working with. And here are the notes in the C major scale. Okay. Now the first note in the C major scale we call the 1. And the second note in the C major scale we call the 2. And so on. Third is the 3. So 4, 5, 6, 7, And then when we get back to C, you can call it the 1, you can call it an 8, it means the same thing. So when I say the flat 7, think about the 7th note in a major scale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then make it flat. So if I played a C major scale with the flat 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now let me play the major scale just so you can hear the difference. And then back to the flat 7. Okay. I can do the same thing with the 3rd. So I'm going to play a C major scale. So I'll start there. Here's my 3rd. Now if I flat the 3rd, this is what it sounds like. Now I can flat the 5th as well. I'm going to play my C major scale. Now I'm going to play a C major scale with the flat 5th. Not the best sound, but you get the idea. So one of the ways that we can apply these modes is with the information given to us in the chord of the tune. So a minor chord can tell you, it's a good idea to use this mode or that mode, and so forth with a major chord and a dominant chord. So how we begin to understand what modes go with the different scales is we have to look at the chord that's implied in the mode. So if we take an Ionian mode, Ionian is just a major scale. I'm going to start on C, and this is concert pitch. So I have my 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th note, and the 8th. Right? And we call those scale degrees. The first note in the mode is the 1st scale degree. The 2nd note is the 2nd scale degree. Continuing on like that. So if I pick the 1st note, the 3rd note, the 5th note, and the 7th, that creates a chord. And it just so happens that it's a major 7th chord for this mode. So if I saw a major 7 chord in the tune, I could probably play an Ionian mode and it would sound pretty good, or maybe not wrong. Some other information can tell you what what modes to play, like what is the chord functioning as, and for that we'll talk about that in another theory lesson. But for now, the name of the chord in the tune tells you the name of the mode, and then you just pick something with the supporting chord. So if it's a C major 7 chord in the tune, you can use a C Ionian. Let's look at the 2nd mode in C Ionian or C major, which is D Dorian. So if I do the 1st, the 3rd, the 5th, and the 7th of that Dorian mode, I get a minor 7 chord. Let me play the scale for you, the mode for you. Okay. The 3rd mode in our major scale is the Phrygian mode. And I'm going to play the scale, and then we're going to identify the chord. So here's my 1st note. Here's my third note. It's a minor third. Here's my fifth note. It's a perfect fifth. And here's my seventh. It's a minor seventh. So Phrygian mode gives us a minor 7 chord. The fourth mode in the major scale is Lydian. So I'll play the scale first. So here's my first note. Here's my third. It's a major third. My fifth note is a perfect fifth. My seventh note is a major seventh. So we have a major seventh chord inside of the Lydian mode. The next mode is Mixolydian. It's G Mixolydian. And I'm going to start by playing the mode. So my first note is G. My second note is B, which makes a major third. My fifth is D, which makes a perfect fifth. And my seventh is a flat seventh. So that gives us a dominant chord. The next mode is A Aeolian. So I'm going to start by playing the mode. So my first note is A, third note is C, fifth note is E, and we have a minor triad there, and the seventh is a flat seven. So that gives us an A minor 7 chord. Inside of that Aeolian mode, we have a minor 7 chord. And the final mode is B Locrian. So I'm going to start by playing the scale. So my first note is B. My third is D. And already we have a minor third. My fifth is F, which gives us a flatted fifth. And the seventh is A, which gives us a flat 7. So we have a minor 7, flat 5 chord that comes from the Locrian. Now, one thing we should note with the minor 7 flat 5 chord is some musicians call it a half diminished chord. Some people call it the minor 7 flat 5. They both mean the same thing and they're interchangeable. The best way we should begin practicing this new information is as a warm-up. Spend 10 minutes on it, getting into your practice session, and use this as a mental warm-up, a finger warm-up, and an ear training warm-up. Now, the exercise that we're going to do is every day that you practice, pick a new root note. Maybe go in order of the circle of fifths or the circle of fourths, or maybe pick something like a root note or a scale that you're not really familiar with, like B major, G flat. So once you've decided on the root note for the day, that root note will remain the same for the entirety of the modes for that day. So what we'll do is, if we decide for this tutorial that the root note of the day is C, we're going to play C Ionian, C Dorian, C Phrygian, C Lydian, C Mixolydian, C Aeolian, and C Locrian. And the way we're going to play that is we're going to ascend up the scale, we're going to turn around on the 9th, descend, turn around on the 7th, and then come back to the root and then play the arpeggio up until the 9th, ascending and descending. So I'll quickly go through each one of the scales and show you what that means. We'll start slow and we'll start with C Ionian. Okay, so let's dissect that a little. I'm going to count the scale degrees up until the 7th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then I'm going to go to the 9th, which in the case of C Ionian is D, and then I'm going to descend the scale until I get to the 2nd. I'm going to go to the 7th, which in C Ionian is B, and then play the arpeggio. So altogether, it sounds like this. So if at this point you're thinking, how do I figure out what C Dorian is? I don't know what flats or sharps are involved in the C Dorian. We're going to figure out a way to do it, building off something that you already know. So what I want you to do is think of a reference scale. Something that you're really familiar with, something that you have under your fingers, and it is not difficult to play that major scale. So in this case, let's say the reference scale is C major. Let's say that's what I choose. What I'll do is I'll play the 2nd note, because the 2nd note, the 2nd mode is the Dorian mode, and that's the one we're trying to figure out. And I'll just play all my notes in C major, starting on the 2nd note and ascending. So D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D. Now, once you figure that out, once you have that under your fingers, we're going to call that the reference scale. Once you have the reference scale under your fingers, play a major scale starting on the same root. So D major, and what you're going to do is you're going to play those back and forth, your reference scale and then the major scale from the same root note, and you're going to compare how those intervals change. So here's my reference. I'm just going to take the first 3 notes. Here's my major. Okay, so already there's a difference in the way it sounds. Let's take another look. So it's the 3rd. In the reference scale, the 3rd is flatted. Okay, let's add 2 more notes to that. We're going to go up to the 4th and the 5th. So here's my reference. Here's the major scale from the same root. One more time, reference. Major scale from the same root. So there's no change between those two on the 4th and 5th intervals. Now we just have to add the 6th and the 7th. So here's my reference. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Here's my major. Reference. Major from the same root. Okay, so the 6 is the same, but the difference is on the reference scale, the 7th is flatted. So what we can now say is that a Dorian mode is a major scale with a flat 3 and a flat 7. We take that information back to the root of the day. So if we go to C, which is the root of the day that we chose here, I'm going to play a major scale, and now I'm just going to flat the 3 and flat the 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. once that information is under your fingers, you can apply the pattern. Let's do one more mode together. Keep wanting to say scale. The next mode in order is Phrygian. Now, if by this point in the video you're thinking, how am I supposed to get these modes in order? Just think back to the acronym. I definitely practice Lydian modes after lunch. Third one being practice, so that means Phrygian. Remember, Phrygian is spelled with a PH. Okay, so if you don't know the flats or the sharps or what's going on in a Phrygian mode, we're going to go back to our reference scale. Now, the reference scale that we chose for this video is C major. And we know the Phrygian is the third mode in a major scale. So here's C, my first note. Here's my second note. Here's my third note. Okay, now we just build a scale from here using all the notes in C major, our reference scale. Okay, play that a couple times until it's under your fingers and it sounds, that sound is in your ear. And then we call that the reference scale. Now the next step, we're going to build a major scale from the same root. So here it is. Okay, let me play my reference scale. Alright, let's take the first three notes. Here's my reference. Here's the major from the same root. Okay, so it sounds different already. Let's dig in. 2 and 3 are different. And what's the difference? They're flatted. Okay, so make a note of that. Flat 2, flat 3. Let's move on to the 4 and the 5. Here's my reference. Here's the major scale from the same root. Reference, major. So we discovered that the 4 and the 5 are the same between the reference and the major scale. So let's go on to the next two notes, the 6 and the 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's the reference. Now I'm going to play the major. So play that a couple times and you'll see that the difference is the reference mode or scale has the 6 and the 7 flatted. So we add that to what we discovered earlier. A Phrygian mode is a major scale with the flat 2, 3, 6, and 7. Okay, now bring that information back to the root of the day. So here's a C major scale. Okay, here's my C major scale with a flat 2, 3, 6, and 7. Play that a couple times, get that under your fingers and get that sound in your ear. And then we'll apply the ascending and descending in arpeggio pattern for this exercise. So it looks and sounds like this. So for the remainder of the modes, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and Locrian, take some time, use the things that we discovered in the first three modes, and discover them on your own. I can give you the information, but the thing about discovery is that it lasts a lot longer when you do it on your own than when somebody just hands you the information. That's what I found. What I'm going to do next, though, is I'm going to play all the modes using this pattern just to give you guys an idea of what they should look and sound like. So I'm going to start with Ionian and work my way up through the order. Okay. Here's a C Ionian. Here's C Dorian. C Phrygian. C Lydian. C Mixolydian. C Aeolian. And C Locrian. There it is. So in this lesson, we went over what a mode is, why they're important, the easy acronym to remember the modes in order, and how to apply them and begin practicing them. Remember, this is only a warm-up. It's a mental warm-up, it's an ear training warm-up, and it's just a short finger warm-up. Dedicate 5 to 10 minutes of the beginning of your practice session to this, and start off your practice session, focused and ready to go on to the next tense. Thanks.